One of the biggest things of why I made the transition is partially, I guess, quality of life. For me, it just felt right to be out here on the land. I'm out here every day working with animals, seeing things grow, seeing progress. It's just rewarding to see those changes that you know are good. Not only good for you, but good for future generations. I'm trying to have a mindset of what are my kids gonna do, or grandkids, or great-grandkids, you know, thinking that 7 generations out, what do we want this farm to be, and how can we leave this, you know, this farm better for future generations.
Welcome to Regenerative Journey, where I share stories of amazing people regenerating the health of soil, people, communities, and the environment. This episode shares the story of Stephen Brass of Walnut Grove Brass Family Farm in Stillman Valley, Illinois, and how he successfully transitioned his 160-acre farm from a chemical-intensive commodity crop operation to a regenerative 100% grass-fed beef operation. Stephen shares a strategy he is using to regenerate his farm soil after a century of tillage and decades of chemical usage. Be sure to stick around to learn how and why he made the transition, get a close look at the changes in the farm's soil, and even see what an ideal cow pie looks like. Stephen is a steward of the land in the truest sense and is passionate about providing healthy food for his community. I hope you enjoy hearing his story of regeneration. Let's jump in.
So my great-grandpa bought the farm in 1912. During the early 20s and 30s and 40s, it was pretty much a conventional farm. They had beef cattle, some pigs, some dairy cows. Crops grown would be a mixture of corn, oats, alfalfa. The 50s and 60s, industrial agriculture kind of started to take root, transitioning into more conventional grains, corn, soybeans, oats. By the time I was born, it was pretty much a corn and soybean rotation. During the early 2000s, I started to become more interested in agriculture and just health in general. At the time, we were a conventional grain operation using herbicides, chemicals, and so forth. And it just didn't feel right, not only from being exposed to those, but just producing food in general. In 2010, I purchased my first cow-calf pairs and converted, I think it was probably 15 acres of row crop ground into diverse pasture. Since 2010, been slowly expanding. Last year, finally made the whole transition, so right now the entire farm is either under pasture or a hay crop. So early on, everything that I read and people that I talked to stated that if you used herbicides, chemicals, for years and years, the biology in your soil is going to be pretty well depleted. So to make that transition, the best way to go from an annual production to more perennial based systems is to use annuals. The first 3 years, I pretty much did annual. Transition from grains, and then the first year planted oats and rye in the springtime, grazed that, came back and planted Sudan grass. Those first couple years just tried to focus on rebuilding the biology. Once I felt like the biology and the soil kind of cleansed itself from all those years of chemicals, we were ready to start putting some of the land then into more perennial systems. So perennial grasses, something that you don't have to replant every year. So this mix out here is a winter grazing mix. The guys at Green Cover Seed in Nebraska recommended it. We've never done this before. It's going to be kind of an experiment. So the goal is to create forage so that the cows have forage over the winter time, because the biggest expense with cattle is feeding them over the winter time. So we want them to harvest their own food. So out here is forage sorghum, Japanese millet, there's sun hemp, there's different brassicas that you can see that are high in protein. There's a gourd mix out here, just a mixture of about 8 or 10 different plants. So yeah, once we graze all of our stockpiled grass this fall, then ideally in January and February, I'll turn the animals in out here and we'll strip graze them or give them a certain amount every day. And I'm hoping to get between 30 to 60 days worth of grazing out here this winter. Anything we can do to reduce the amount of hay we have to feed is going to help the bottom line for sure. No grain. It's all strictly grass from birth until harvest. So grain is high in omega-9 fats, which is a pro-inflammatory fat. Anytime you have an animal that's only on grass, that translocates into omega-3 fats in the meat. So omega-3 fats are anti-inflammatory. And the other problem when you feed animals grain is they can get acidosis in their rumen. Basically, they're not designed to have a high grain diet. So with grass, our main concern is obviously growing meat that is healthy and that has a good omega fat profile in it, and that's what our customers want. Our animals, I want them to have a good long life. We've got some cows that are 14, 15 years old. A lot of dairy farms that have a high grain diet, the average lifespan of a dairy cow that's fed a high grain diet, I think is 3 or 4 lactations at the most. And then their bodies are wore out from being pumped so hard with so much energy, and their rumen just doesn't function like it should anymore. So when we move an animal into a new pasture, the grass is ungrazed like this. And like I said earlier, most of the energy is in the top third of the grass plant. So when an animal comes into a new pasture and they start grazing, what they'll do is they'll go around the whole pasture and they'll only nip the tops of the plant. Once they've gone through the entire pasture and they're still hungry, then they'll start to graze lower and lower down the plant. So you can see this plant hasn't been touched very much, but this one right next door has had the top half taken down. In another 40, 50, 60 days, depending on the weather, this will have regrown and it'll be like it wasn't grazed. Every time you graze a plant, some of the roots can die back, and that creates organic matter in the soil. And once this plant regrows, you're creating more root system, a deeper, stronger root system. The reason that most conventional ranches look like a golf course is because they don't ever move their animals. The animals go through the entire farm or ranch. They eat the tops. Well, once the tops are gone, then they just keep moving down and down and down, and before you know it, you got a golf course out there. The top growth correlates with the depth of the root system. So the shorter your plants are, the shorter your root system is, which when you get a drought, then nothing grows. So that's the reason to let it grow, recover, get a deep root system, and then graze it down. Just keep pulsing. So we're in today's paddock here, and they've been here for 1 day. We're gonna move them to today's paddock, so we're gonna move them down. So basically I have an electric wire here that I'm gonna reel up to allow them to move into today's new paddock. Hello girls, come on mamas. So they know every time they see me that they're getting moved to fresh grass, so they're pretty much trained, the cows that is, to follow. So our entire farm is surrounded by woven wire, high tensile fencing. Then we subdivide the entire farm into smaller paddocks. So every 300 feet, I have another high tensile wire like this. Then within this 300 feet by 1,500 feet, I subdivided even more with poly wire. The electricity comes from this high tensile wire, and then it gets transferred to the poly wire here. So every day I give them a new chunk of grass using poly wire and step-in posts. All right, come on girls. Come on girls, yep, I know, come on. You can see the landscape here, which is gently rolling. We used to conventionally farm this, so tillage every year and plant annual grain crop out here. The issue with this rolling landscape is that when you do tillage, the ground is uncovered for a certain amount of time of the year. And if you get a heavy rain, all of the good soil that was up on top would slowly work its way down to the valleys. So the ridges on the hills, basically the topsoil and a lot of the organic matter has run down to the valleys, and you're left with areas that just don't have very good fertility. So now that we're in a perennial based system, we've got continuous cover out here. This field has been continuously covered for the last 10 years. The soil has improved over the years, but it's gonna take, you know, many, many years in order for this to improve. So we'll dig down here and just get a rough idea of what the ground looks like. And you can see right here, even this first slice, we've got earthworms right in the top inch, which is good. You can see though that, you know, here's a rock right there. You can see that it's kind of that yellowish kind of subsoil. I would imagine that 100 years ago, this would have been a darker type of soil with higher organic matter, but over the years, like I mentioned, it just has all washed down the hill. But we're making improvements. You can even kind of tell here, this was down 3-4 inches versus the top inch here. There is a noticeable darker difference in this top inch or two. So we know we're getting improvement. So now we're at the bottom of the hill. We were at the top of the hill where the soil was thin from all the years of tillage. Now we're at the valley, and we'll dig a slice just to do a comparative analysis of kind of what the soil down here is like. We flip over a slice, we've got earthworms, which is good. You can see that it's darker. There is one rock, but you don't have that gravelly clay type soil. So we break this apart. We got here's another good earthworm. And you can see the earthworm, little earthworm channels. So they're working their way through, eating some of that carbon that's the root hairs. Just a better, deeper soil, better structure. Lots of good root hairs. So as we pulse the grass by grazing and giving rest, grazing and giving it rest, these root hairs will die and regrow and die and regrow over time. And all of these root hairs that are growing through here create channels in the soil. And those channels help to improve infiltration of water, create organic matter, and just give it better soil tilth. When we're grazing, one of the things I look at, the manure of the animals. If you look at this cow pie here, this is what I would call the ideal cow pie, if there is such a thing. An ideal cow pie should look like a pumpkin pie that somebody dumped on the ground. And as you can see, this has a little bit of height to it. This cow pie right here is telling me that the animals are getting enough protein. If they were getting too much protein, it would be real watery and spread out. Typically in the springtime, with the new grass growing really fast, it's really high in protein and not a lot of fiber in that grass because there's new growth. So the cows will just have really watery manure. And when they have really watery manure, that means the forage is moving through their system way too fast. You want it to slow down, so they need more fiber. So occasionally in the springtime, we'll feed some hay in addition to grazing the fresh growth in the spring. And that fiber just helps that real lush forage just to move through their system slower. If they have too runny a manure, an animal can actually lose weight. When you're digging through a cow pie, it's good to see is all the fiber digested. You can see here that it is digested. In the wintertime, if it's a mature hay that isn't as digestible, you'll see a lot of the stalks in there still at some point. We will see different bugs. Dung beetles are a really good insect that'll come out of the soil. They'll grab a chunk of manure, they'll roll it and pull it back down into the soil. We don't use any kind of chemicals out here. If we did use some kind of chemicals, those tend to discourage dung beetles. So we want to encourage insects in our pastures. So making the transition from conventional mindset to not conventional, especially if your neighbors aren't doing it, it's a challenge for sure. I would say the biggest struggle is probably between your two ears, just thinking about it and how am I going to go about it. I would say find some people that are doing what you're thinking of doing and just pick their brain. Talk to them, ask questions, read. There's lots of resources out there. Go to conferences if you can, rub shoulders with people and just ask questions. And at some point you have to stop thinking about it and just start doing something and make that switch. For consumers, why they should support regenerative agriculture is just from an ecological standpoint. Like it's good for the land, for the soil. Economically, anytime you can spend your money locally, you're building community, you're recycling it through local businesses. And if you do like what you see out there, then support it, because the only way that I can continue to farm this way is by having customers and having those customers buy year after year and spreading the word to other people that, you know, they have great beef and they're doing good things out there. They're trying to lead the land better than they started.
I want to say a special thanks to Stephen for welcoming me onto his family's farm and for sharing his amazing story of regeneration. If you want to learn how a ranch in Wyoming regenerated their depleted soils using sheep, be sure to check out this video here. I encourage everyone to learn more about Walnut Grove Brass Family Farm, and I'll provide links in the show notes to their website and social media sites. If you enjoy hearing stories of regeneration, be sure to like and share this video, and please subscribe to the channel. And let me hear from you in the comments. Thanks for watching.